What does the game Final Nights hide from the player off camera? Released in 2015, Final Nights is a Five Nights at Freddy's fan game that featured an array of different animatronics and interesting gameplay mechanics. Of course, there's plenty of things hidden off camera for us to check out, so today we're diving into Final Nights to take a look at everything we're not normally supposed to see. As always, I hope you enjoy. Let's do a quick summary of what Final Nights entails so everyone remembers the flow of events. So the game starts off with a player entering this pitch black house with a flashlight, and after entering, the door immediately slams behind us. The player then walks to the center of the room, and the night itself begins. We're definitely not alone though, as the marionette is inside the house with us. So the way this game works is a puppet will begin entering the room through one of 4 different places, including both side doors, the TV, and the cabinet behind you. In order to prevent him from jump scaring you, you have to quickly turn in his direction and flash him with your light. After reaching 6 AM though, the puppet will begin descending from the ceiling above the player, and this brings the night to an end. So that's it for the first night. I'll explain the next night when we get to it, but for now, let's brighten things up and check out the living room area. Taking a look at this room with all the lights on is pretty crazy, because the game is usually so dark you can hardly see everything that's inside. For starters, if we look at this table up close, we can see this bottle labeled Faz beer. But right next to it is something a little bit more interesting. On the edge of this table, there's a cutout newspaper article that reads, Fazbear's to close by year's end. And if we take a closer look at this article, we can see that the lorem ipsum placeholder text covers most of the page. As you may know, this is a default text that is used by game devs, graphic designers, and web designers for formatting purposes. Eventually, this text is supposed to be replaced, but in this case, the player will likely never be close enough to read it, so there was no need. On the other side of the room, we can find a few VHS tapes lined up against the TV, and upon closer inspection, they are actual movies. We can see The Land Before Time 7, Back to the Future, and lastly, Jurassic Park. For some reason, each of these boxes is mirrored though, so everything on them is backwards. It's definitely a cool find, considering you'd only ever see the box in the very front during normal gameplay. So when we're facing the TV, we can see these paintings hanging up on the wall, but because of how dark it is in this room, you can't really get a good look at them. Taking a look up close though, we can see that the biggest of these paintings is of some trees with legs. It's both funny and creepy at the same time. These other paintings are of a guy standing in front of a mountainside and a real-life photo of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. Now, if we go into that room where the puppet was hiding during the opening cutscene, we'll find that this room is actually a fully designed bedroom. To my knowledge, we never actually enter this room in the game, so I find it a bit odd that they chose to put stuff back here. There's a bed with some side tables and a Freddy Fazbear plush, and there's also a large window that faces the backyard out here. The yard is surprisingly big considering we never actually go outside, and there's actually a lot hidden out here for us to look at. So one of the methods that the puppet uses to attack the player is actually through the TV. It typically turns on with a staticky sound as the puppet's face appears on screen. However, if we fly beneath the map, we'll see that particular screen is just floating down here. This asset is stored down here so that when the puppet attacks through the TV, it can simply be teleported into the living room instead of having to load it in each time. When we turn it off though, this screen will be moved back down here until it's needed once more. If we take a look on the roof, we can also find a lamp just kind of sitting here upside down. These lamps are actually placed within the walls of the house to look like wall-mounted lights, when in reality, they are full-size floor lamps. I'm not entirely sure why this one is up here, or why it's upside down. That's not the only thing up here though, because just above this lamp is actually the puppet themselves. They're floating up here in an A pose, waiting until the night actually starts, where they will then be teleported to one of the 4 locations I had mentioned earlier. This isn't the only version of this animatronic that is stored out of bounds though, because in the backyard, just outside that bedroom window, we can find another copy of them just floating under the grass. Now I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is actually used for the ending scene where the puppet slowly drops on top of the player. Speaking of the puppet, I want to see exactly what is happening when they enter the room through these various doors. So as you can see, they slowly slide the door open and inch their way inside the living room. And the moment we flash them with our light, they slam the door and move out of sight again. However, if we move the camera beyond that door, we'll see the puppet is now clipping through the wall in the bedroom. When they come through the cupboard behind us, their head and shoulders are just floating through the wall. And I have to admit, I was not expecting to see their legs pointing upwards like this, and I laughed pretty hard when I saw it the first time. Just the puppet, doing puppet things. Nothing to see here. Similar to the previous door, when we flash them with our light, they will retract through the wall and freeze in place out here, waiting until they are called upon to appear at another door. As you can see, they just vanish into thin air, and if we move the camera to that door on the right, we can see that they are now trying to enter through that door. Something I found really interesting though, is that when they are attacking through the TV, all the other versions of the puppet are loaded in at the same time. The puppet is currently present on the TV screen, and if we take a look out of bounds, we can see that they're also loaded in at each of these locations, waiting for the player to turn the TV off or get jump scared. When the TV is turned off, all but one of them will unload, and the remaining puppet will then attack the player through one of these locations. Throughout the game, this small robot will also spawn in from time to time, although it's hard to see as it unloads shortly after loading in. Upon closer inspection, we can see it's actually a 3D model of Mettaton from Undertale. I wasn't expecting to find this here, but it's definitely a cool little Easter egg. The last thing I wanted to check out on this particular map was the scene where the puppet drops down from the ceiling. And from another perspective, it's actually just that. They will appear in their default pose on the ceiling, where they then slowly make their way downwards. They'll continue descending until they're mostly clipped through the floor, where they then stop and the night comes to a close. That's it for the first level. Next, we'll check out the attic map that comes directly after this. So in this level, you enter the pizzeria and make your way to a staircase in the back of the building. From here, you enter the attic, where you then open a door to find Springtrap waiting for you inside. Fredbear is also on the ceiling above, waiting for you to drop your guard. You have to keep your eye on Springtrap, as well as flash Fredbear with your light in order to keep him from entering the attic. You must open the generator room, where you'll find a crowbar that is used to enter this room with a clock. Upon powering the generators, you gain access to the employees only room, where Fredbear and 3 endos can be found, as well as a pendulum for a grandfather clock. After putting the pendulum back in this clock, the generators explode, setting the building on fire. Running downstairs, you attempt to escape, only to be blocked by Fredbear and the puppet. Fredbear chomps you Bite of 87 style, and the game comes to a close. So the first thing I want to do was fly out of bounds and see what I could find. The first thing I saw were these large, detached pillars just kind of floating in the void. They're actually pretty large, and I'm not entirely sure what they're used for. If we take a peek underneath of this map, we can actually find both of the interactable items we eventually pick up in this level. The crowbar is just floating upright beneath the floor, and directly beside it, we can see the pendulum for the grandfather clock. Even more interesting, we can see the bodies of 3 endos clipping through the floor of this map. If we take a look inside the map right above these, we'll actually find their heads poking through the floor, giving the player the impression that these animatronics are in fact bodiless. So right next to this attic door where we came from, we can actually find Springtrap clipping through this section of the attic. This is actually the jump scare model that is used when the player comes in contact with Springtrap. Instead of loading this asset in every time the player gets jump scared, it's kept outside the map so that it can be teleported whenever it is needed. Way up on top of this map, we can actually find Fredbear floating all alone just above the roof. He's basically stored here until the game calls him to enter the crawl space in the ceiling. Speaking of which, if we move the camera into said crawl space and trigger Fredbear to spawn, we can see him just sort of appear in this attic area. He slowly moves towards the hole in the ceiling, and when the flashlight hits him, he retracts back to the starting position where he will remain until he makes another attempt at entering this level through that hole. As the building catches fire and we make our way to the exit, we are of course stopped by Fredbear and the puppet. We can watch as the marionette slowly makes his way towards the player, and we are bitten by Fredbear. Finally, we can see in the credits sequence that this little forest area is actually an open map with intersecting roads and some trees. We can also clearly see the burnt remains of the animatronics in this ash and rubble. But with that brings us to the end of Final Nights. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, drop a like and share a memory with this game down in the comment section. Thanks for watching, and I'll see all of you in the next one. Cheers!